PC is an absolutely fantastic way to game. You get access to an absolute massive library of titles, better frame rates, better resolution, better graphics, and of course the ability to mod the game and just have it function how you would like. But with that said, getting into PC gaming can be a bit of a minefield. And in this video, as you probably guessed from the title, I don't want you guys to be wasting money. So I've compiled a list of ways that I think that a lot of gamers are wasting their money on hardware. And also in the comments down below, if you can perhaps help out a fellow gamer. Let us all know what you think are common ways that people do waste money and give some advice on things that you kind of wish you had not done. With that said, let's jump straight into it with perhaps one of the biggest wastes of money I see: premium graphics cards for low to mid-range GPUs. What the heck am I talking about? Well, if you're buying a high-end card, let's say an RTX 5080 or 5090 as of the time I'm recording this, then there are some reasons that you might want to buy an Astral or another premium GPU because they've got better power distribution, and in the case of the 5080 and the 5090, well, let's just say it takes better care of your GPU in terms of the power connector. With that said, when you move further down the stack, let's say an RTX 5060, 5060 Ti, or equivalent AMD GPU, I think that there's a really good argument that buying a premium graphics card, so the ones with all the fancy bells and whistles, and you've got all the RGB, it looks nice, but ultimately it's just costing you more money. And in my personal opinion, you're better off just saving it and buying the reference design or buying a cheaper higher end GPU. For example, rather than buying a premium 5060 Ti that's got, overclocking and all of that stuff, just maybe save up a few more bucks and buy like, well, let's just say an RTX 5070 or what have you. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some benefits to the premium GPUs, even in the low to mid range. You might get a nicer cooler, and again, it looks a little bit nicer. But when it comes to raw performance, there just isn't that much difference. Ultimately, the way GPU boost works now, as long as you're keeping the GPU reasonably cool, so yeah, you might need to run the fans a little bit faster, so it may be a little bit noisier, the GPU will still behave pretty much identically. In fact, a lot of GPUs will also allow you to flash the BIOS, which is outside the scope of this video, but even so, you can flash the BIOS, and when you do that, you get access to higher power limits anyway. So ultimately, my personal preference is just to save as much money as you can, buy a reference design, unless you're going into the high-end GPUs. If you're picking up something like a 9070 XT or an RTX 5080 or 5090, then it might be worth spending the extra dollars. Now next, and this one might sound a bit strange, but it's Gen 5 SSDs. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not a waste of money in and of themselves, but right now, SSD prices, in fact, memory prices as a whole, are just going absolutely crazy. And while Gen 5 drives do have a lot of benefits for high-end systems, let's say, for example, you're doing a lot of video editing and you're using multiple 4K streams with high bit rates and other type of stuff like that, then it can be a benefit. But if you're buying your SSD primarily for gaming, especially on kind of a mid-range rig, honestly, the extra transfer speeds are probably not just going to be worth it to you. Now, obviously, in the future, prices could change, and Gen 4 and Gen 5 drives could become a lot closer in parity. But right now, if you're just gaming, I really would not spend the extra on a Gen 4 drive. It's just not really going to be beneficial in terms of loading times, really. And it's not going to make any difference in frame rate. Motherboards. I would highly recommend you don't buy the cheapest board you can, but at the same time, I think picking up a high-end premium board, if you're pairing it with a lower-end processor, also does not make a ton of sense. For example, let's say you're going the AMD route and you're going to pick up a 9700X or something like that. Does it really require the best AM5 motherboard that you can get your hands on? Probably not. Now, if you do want to push your system, let's say, again, you're sticking with AM5 and you want to pick up a 9950X3D and you're going to be doing some overclocking and tweaking, you need lots of I/O, then picking up a better X890 motherboard could make a lot of sense. But if you're just gaming, which is the main focus of this video, I would just recommend buying a good solid board. Obviously, do make sure that you check out some reviews as well. You don't want a board that's got crappy VRMs or MOSFETs or any of that stuff. But ultimately, as long as it does have decent expandability, so you have enough PCIe slots, you've got enough Gen 4/5, whatever you need. I don't really think you're going to need anything too crazy. One of the good things about AM5 is it looks like Zen 6, of course, is going to be compatible. We don't know about Zen 7, but honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised. So you do want to make sure that your board is reasonably robust, because you don't want to pick up a board and then find it craps out in a couple of years' time. But I just wouldn't waste money on buying a board that is significantly outweighing the value of your processor, especially if you're not going to be doing overclocking or anything like that. Now, another thing that you need to be somewhat careful of are pieces of hardware which have a gaming in the title. That isn't to say necessarily something like a graphics card, because that does make some sense, but let's say a headset or like a chair. Oftentimes it's used as more of a promotional thing. And let's say, for the sake of discussion, you want to pick up a pair of headphones. You might just be better off getting a nice pair of headphones that would be great for listening to music and so on, or at the very least have other uses, rather than just picking up this gaming variant, which oftentimes doesn't have much better audio. Also, the same thing could be said for gaming microphones. Yet another big waste, actually, I see, and that would be RGB. And this is everything from RGB lighting strips down to case fans and, the really premium fans where you can do a whole bunch of stuff. Now, again, it does look very nice aesthetically if RGB is your thing, but if you are on a limited budget, just be mindful that that budget isn't going to necessarily improve performance if it's making RGB, glow. Ultimately, it is your PC, and of course you should, build accordingly. But in my personal opinion, if you are allocating a good portion of your budget for pretty lights and pretty fans and other things that aren't necessarily going to improve the performance, it's not necessarily a good idea if you are sticking to the mid-range. Ultimately, picking up a nice case which actually has good airflow is really important. In the background here, I have an NZXT case, and it's absolutely a behemoth, but it's also not a case that I would recommend for the mid-range. You can see the bloody size of it. It literally is dwarfing an Astral RTX 5090. But it's a really nice case. It's a really nice case, but would I suggest you pick that thing up if you're on a mid-range budget and you're going to be pairing that instead with a 9060 XT? Probably not, unless you really are going to be going absolutely ham later on. It's just not going to be worth it for you. So anyway, guys, that's just a quick video I wanted to make regarding these topics. Do let me know in the comments below of some pitfalls you see regularly that people make. Now, pretty soon on the channel, there will also be a follow-up to the CPU set setter video. I, of course, had a pretty good reception for that. So there's going to be a follow-up where I'm going to be focusing on a single CCD Ryzen configuration, be doing some more testing. And also, I want to thank you all for subscribing to the channel and the awesome reception that you guys have been giving me in terms of, feedback for the content. Of course, I'm still working a little bit on the format, so things will change and obviously improve over the while. But with that said, thank you very much for watching the video. Take care of yourselves. Have an amazing day. Bye for now.